Hello guys, my name is Boodog47, and I'd like to welcome you to my second installment of SMITE item mechanics brought to you by Tier Monster. And first, I'd like to say that Arachne is just so fun to play. She's not the most viable god, especially late game, but overall she's very fun to play. Anyways, the purpose of this series is to break down items and explain what they do and to explain when they are appropriate to use. Last week I explained the different mechanics of how items work, and now that you all understand the basics of itemization, today I will actually be explaining the items. Seeing as this is the first video in the series that showcases items, I feel that it would be appropriate to talk about the starter items. There are 5 starter items in the game, each representing a specific purpose. These items should only be bought at the beginning of the match, and if you don't buy them right out of the gate, then they're pretty much useless and you should not buy them at all. The starter items ensure some bit of sustain in your lane for only the first few minutes of the gameplay, with the exception of Bumba's Mask, which I'll explain in a bit. You should only get the starting items if you plan on playing passively though. They each only have 1 tier and each cost only 800 gold. This ensures that they can be fully utilized right away. However, assuming that you're playing Conquest, where you start out with 1500 gold, 800 gold is more than half of your starting gold, leaving you only with 700 gold left to spend. If you plan on playing more aggressively, then you should forego the starter item completely and just buy into the first 2 tiers of footwear, or anything else for that matter, and some health and mana potions. Usually my standard build is the starting item of my choice, depending on my role of the match of course, and I would usually get the first tier of footwear, such as shoes or boots or tabby, and then I'd get 1 health pot and 1 mana pot. You can get whatever you want of course, but I'm just giving you a standard build that is very safe and very common. So that essentially wraps up the intro, and I'll jump right into explaining the different starting items. Death's Toll is a starting item that should only be used on physical based gods. It gives you 15 physical power, 90 health, and it gives you a 3% attack speed buff. It is mostly used for its passive, which is that Death's Toll gives you an additional 5 health and 1.5 mana every time you land a basic attack. This applies to attacks on both gods and minions. I recommend especially using Death's Toll on ranged AD gods such as Artemis, Apollo, Neith, or Anhur, because you can safely hide behind your minions and continue to attack, healing you at the same time. It can be used on a melee-based physical god, but I would not recommend doing this if you're laning with ranged gods, because he or she will be doing most of the damage, and you'll mostly be getting the lane experience that is shared between you and your partner, and will therefore be wasted due to the lack of consistent hits on the enemy. The saved money will be better spent on a few extra health potions. Vampiric Shroud is the starting item that should only be used on magical ability based gods. It gives you an extra 20 magical power, an extra 100 health, 5 MP5, and its passive gives you both 10 health and 10 mana per killed enemy, regardless if it's a minion or a god. This doesn't sound like much of a passive compared to Death's Toll giving you 5 health per hit, but it is extremely helpful, especially for a mage in the mid lane who can clear a wave of minions in one attack, such as Ra. If you take down 8 minions in one shot, that'll give you 80 health as well as 80 mana, and that's very beneficial for mid lane because that health is instantaneous versus Death's Toll, which forces you to work at it and build up your health over time. Mark of the Vanguard is the starting item for tanks. It gives you 5 physical protection and 5 magical protection as well as 100 health, and its passive is that it reduces all damage by 5. Now this doesn't seem like very much at all, but in the beginning for the first 5 to 10 minutes, that is a ton of protection against the Archers of Doom, as well as a bit of sustain against the enemies. However, this reduction of damage is so low that the item basically wears off after 5 minutes. So because of this, I would recommend getting this item only for tanks and only for a solo lane. Watcher's Gift is a starter item that is really only meant for melee style gods, especially tanks. It is severely underused because people only look at its passive and don't take the entire item into consideration. It allows you to teleport to any allied ward or tower without any damage interruption, and it grants you 100 health as well as 10 HP5 and 5 MP5. Its passive gives you the last hits on minions if your laning partner also gets the last hit, and gives you an extra piece of gold per 5. Because of its passive, I would not recommend using this item anywhere else other than Conquest or maybe Assault. The math behind the Watcher's Gift says that after 5 minutes of minions, with your laning partner getting every single last hit, you will have only made about 210 gold, and therefore is near impossible to pay back. This is why many people don't like the item. However, the HP5 and MP5 that it gives is always severely overlooked. Even still, many people would say that Mark of the Vanguard is much better overall, but only slightly. I think that to make this item more viable, they would have to add an additional 50 health, just because, in my opinion, it falls behind Mark of the Vanguard. However, I believe because of the HP 5 and MP 5 that it gives, it lasts longer and should prove to be more useful over time in comparison. Bumba's Mask is probably one of my favorite starter items because it allows for jungling. It gives an extra 30 health, however its passive gives you an extra 15 MP5 when you're in the jungle, and when you're clearing out jungle camps you are healed 10% of the jungle camp's bosses' max health. The last part of the passive awards you last hit bonuses on the jungle creeps, so if a lane member comes over to help you get a buff, you should let him get the kills because then you'll both get the last hit bonuses then. The role of the jungler is not so much for sustain, but more for helping out your team. If somebody is jungling effectively, they will be getting as much golden experience as the solo lane member. This allows there to be 2 solo lane members who don't have to share gold or experience, thus promoting more farming overall for the team. Jungling is an important part of the game and should be discussed before the match starts so your team can choose an effective solo laner. Many people have questions about when they should sell their starting items. For me, it really depends on the match. I would recommend that if you're getting farmed quite well, then you should keep it until later. Having the starting item won't hurt you and doesn't keep you from getting any extra gold. You may, however, want to sell it after about 15 minutes or so, because after that it really doesn't benefit you at all. However, if you are getting out farmed and the enemy is building their items faster than you, you may want to sell it earlier after about 5 to 10 minutes, because then you can use the received gold to finish an item or start a new one, to try to keep up with the enemy. Anyways, that just about covers all the starting items in the game. They're great for playing passively and for a bit more sustain, but if you want to play aggressively, just avoid them completely and get something else. Go ahead and check me out at youtube.com/user/therealboodog47, where I have more SMITE content. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe to Tier Monster, and I'll catch you all on the flip side of life. Peace!